All right, any other discussion? We have a motion on the floor. All in favor, show sign of right hand.
One more question.
Well, okay, I didn't see you. That look on your
But we're
face.
voting on the contract,
We're voting on his motion only on the wording of the contract.
not dollar amounts now.
No, no.
Okay, I'm with you.
Okay, any other discussion before we vote?
Well, Mr. Chairman, is there still a question about, or is there a question about what we're funding? Because that's pretty well set already, is that correct?
We haven't got there yet.
Oh, okay, all right. So
Let's just vote on your motion.
Okay, got it, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Any other discussion? All in favor, show sign of right hand. Motion carries unanimously. Amen.
That was just the contract of the money.
All right. What's your next tab, Mr. Dark?
What do you mean it's a daughter? I read the floor.
Anybody's tab.
There you go, anybody's tab.
Uh-oh, Marshall should have dropped the whole book.
I did, I really did. Find nobody's foot.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Bell.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to put a motion on the floor, since the county manager's budget is balanced, that we accept his balanced budget and move on.
Please withdraw that motion. I got just a few yellow tabs.
And if anybody have any questions, let them individually go to the county manager.
Did you pay him to make that motion?
No, but I like it.
You're not serious, are you?
Yeah.
You gonna make me vote against your motion?
Well, you can if you want to, that's your privilege.
Can we table?
Please give us just a little bit of time here to ask the question.
How much time do I need to give you?
I don't know.
10 minutes to do it?
No. We better vote on your motion then.
I have a motion on the floor. Any discussion?
Just comment, I don't necessarily disagree with it, I just don't think we're quite ready. That's the thing I'm saying, Mr. President.
Do you want us to vote on?
Yeah.
Okay, I have a motion on
I
the
want to see how
floor.
many chickens we have.
Mr. Bell's made a motion that we, accept the budget,
Balanced budget.
balanced budget. All in favor, show sign of right hand. All opposed, show like sign, likewise. Motion carries 5-1.
How does it
It's
feel
a
to
matter
have
of-
6-1
It's a
vote?
matter of record.
It's a matter
I mean,
of.
6-1.
Sorry,
I'm
Mr. Wood.
I can't count it anymore.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, on the school capital expensing, on the schools, is it my understanding that WISH is in fact funded under the school's budget? Or is that separate?
It is in the same fund,
Is in the same fund?
yes.
So I just want to make sure that the county is getting credit for
Yes,
that
they are.
$170,000 that we're funding WISH by.
Yes, we are.
And is the same thing hold true in regards to the $130,000 for community and schools?
That is not true. We have that in the general fund.
You've got that in the general fund, and my understanding was that it had to be separate because of some other
Formula.
legal requirements on the part of sharing revenues and so forth.
That's
If you
correct.
ran it through the other, you would have to share the money on a per pupil basis with the charter schools.
Okay, but the 130 was the only amount of money that's, other than what's listed here, that's on the side.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a pause, and I was gonna let y'all go ahead, but the next issue, and that is, even though it's not in the budget, I think I've already discussed this, and that is, I'm hoping that we are going to address in the short term, the providing of services to Wayne County citizens, that our offices are open 5 days a week, and that will be shortly addressed.
We're gonna be reviewing that after the budget's over. What we have done is we've gotten not spreadsheets, it's a chart showing how each employee works and by division. So then we're gonna be sitting down and going over those. The emphasis is gonna be on those that are not currently open 5 days a week. We have some departments now where some employees work 4 10-hour days, but the department is open 5 days a week. So, and we found that, to me, that's acceptable. What I think where you have a problem is you want to make sure these offices are open 5 days a week. And so that's what we're going to be looking at.
Yeah, just a comment, and I agree, because I truly believe it not only inconveniences citizens, but they're confused. They don't know who's open and who's not.
Right.
And, because I've said it before, you know, when I was a private citizen, I'd come there and I'm like, well, they're closed. And most people take off on Fridays to, you know, take care of their business if they can, if they're working people. So I think that's why it's important.
Well, guys, I'm gonna get through my tabs. Y'all tell me to shut up when I need to. Were we able to get any numbers on the sewer rates and when that was increased and
We have
last?
we have a letter that says they were decreased in 2007.
They were decreased.
Decreased, so that's eight years ago.
And in reflective in regards to Goldsboro's sewer rates for treatment, I did the numbers on that, but I don't have them right here, but they have gone up substantially.
Give me mine back.
Okay. In other words, I just want to make sure that the rates are accurately reflecting the increases that we're being charged from Goldsboro. I mean, that's only fair. If they went up 15%, we ought to be going up 15% minimum. So that was the only question I had on those rates. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Bell.
You maybe explain initiates that, what we're gonna do about that visitor thing.
We're gonna leave that to George to explain this.
And that way we won't be tying her time.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Let her know.
Okay.
She
Oh, sorry.
wasn't here. Just let her know what she said about talking about it.
Mr. Chairman, you gonna advise?
What our decision was, that's all.
Yeah, just, Mr. Wood, you gonna?
Yeah, we're gonna get together and go over the intent is that no one who's here illegally is to be paid with county, get service with county money. And we're gonna work out the details on how you're gonna verify everything.
May I say 2 sentences? I just want to thank you for your time today. Our board is very proud of our relationship with the county. You are my employer, I belong to you, and we do not intend to use county funds to fund anyone who is not a taxpayer and a legal resident of our county. Thank you so much. You guys are done with you today?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I'm going through this
What time?
revenues and expenditures. Revenues, that would be under general fund tab. You're ahead of me. Are we basically going to just go through these tabs?
Well, I think the best thing to do is let each person go through any questions they have, or any comments they have, or recommendations, or anything like that.
All right, Mr. Chairman, since I've got the floor, here I go. Just for informational purposes for the board, I did speak with George Wolf on animal control. You'll see a non-capital expenditure, capital outlay expenditure of $40,000 on the cat kennels. They really are torn all to pieces. He is reaching out and has agreed to hold those dollars until stainless steel ones can be produced. He's going to meet with Benton, I think, to see whether or not we can get those made locally. I did have some concern with that.
Can I follow up on the animal board? So aren't we outfitting some trucks this year too? That's part of the big expenditure.
I think there are 2 trucks, am I correct?
And
We're required to do those.
We've already got 2, and we've got to get 2
I
more.
think,
Because I looked at those expenditures and I was trying to remember what it was.
That's crazy. It is what it is.
The other issue on highlighting, on the, there is a tremendous increase in the IT department, and I think we're gonna have someone here. Is Stephen gonna come and kind of give us
We had him scheduled for 1:30.
1:30? Okay, so he's gonna give us some information on that. Sheriff's Department, I believe the sheriff is also gonna stop by this afternoon.
1:30.
The, hold on, I'm trying to read all this as I go here. Animal control. Under transportation expenses, I'm asking us to actually increase the budget. Please write that down. Increase the budget to accommodate the acquisition of 4 welcome signs coming into Wayne County. If you'll come into Wayne County, all you see is just a little sign that says Wayne County at the county line. We need a sign there welcoming folks there, talking about Seymour Johnson or something there that we take pride in our community. It really does put a different atmosphere toward marketing Wayne County. And I think the total cost on that was
I think it was 32,000.
$32,000 is the maximum cost on that. It goes through NCDOT, and as we discussed in our retreat, we did have an interest in that. So I think that would go into transportation.
Where do we propose to put those signs? Just on 70 or?
There was one on 795 coming in, one at Lenore County coming into the new bypass, one on 70 coming in, and the other one was down below Mount Olive on 117.
You talking about those large signs like to have
Yes.
around Raleigh?
Right. I mean, Goldsboro has one, when you come in on 795, you've seen that one, it's something similar to that. So I just think we need to
That's what makes sure we're
toot our horn a little bit here.
So the 32,000 is for all 4?
Yes,
Okay.
that would be for all
Make a
4.
motion on that.
Um,
We need a motion on that, too.
You need a motion on that?
Yeah,
I so move.
Have you got it, Marshall?
yes, sir.
I have a motion on the floor to amend the budget for a maximum of $32,000 for welcome signs, 4 of them coming into Wayne County. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor, show sign of right hand. Motion carries unanimous.
Now, Mr. Chairman, let's go about paying for it. I was at the library last week before last, for the coal ash, and they made a presentation there. And they used the auto-visual equipment and so forth, and it worked fine. And they have got in the budget for a $18,000, I don't have the exact number, around $18,000 for audio-visual equipment there to replace that. And I would ask, and so move that we eliminate that portion of the budget. That's $18,000 for the audio-visual for the library, which is working, by the way, it's not broke. And I think that they just wanted to go ahead and replace that. So I move that we
They want to
eliminate.
replace it comparable to what you got down in Mount Olive.
I don't have a problem with replacing it if it needs replacing, but if it doesn't need replacing, it doesn't make no difference what you got in Mount Olive.
That's right.
And.
In other words, if it ain't broke, let's not fix it in this year.
He's saying it's working, that
And, so you're not,
We're just gonna
does she have
eliminate.
some written explanation as to why she wanted it? I mean, whenever that
Well,
discussion,
I think from what I'm hearing here, they're trying to have something comparable to what is in our new
comparable to that,
facility in
and she
Mount Olive.
thinks it's got age on it and all of that, and I think what Joe is saying is, let's wait till it doesn't work.
And if it quits in the middle of the year, we'll do a
Then
budget
we'll look
amendment.
That's right,
Then
that's
we'll
right.
look at it.
You got the form of a motion?
I did.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor that will eliminate the visual, what
It's the audio video equipment in the public meeting
What
room.
line item is that?
110, 6110, 510.
So you've got the line item on it. Please add that in the motion.
Any other discussion? If none, all in favor, show sign of right hand. Motion carries unanimous.
And Mr. Cromartie, did he vote?
Just a minute, I mean, I had to find the tab word.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Would you
library.
Give me just 1 second. The existing sound audio system was installed in Goldberg Library 2003. While the system served the library needs at that time, technology has improved and the equipment no longer serves the public needs. Outside agents such as state libraries struggle with using this obsolete equipment. Now, if that's the one we're talking about, she's saying that while it works, there's a struggle to use it. And if you compare that with all other technology, and I brought this up in another session we had with somebody else, once technology gets 2 or 3 years old, and this is a 2003 version, while it might have fitted the bill that you're talking about, Mr. Daughtry, I would have to take her rationale, I need to hear her rationale, and I'm reading it here, best that we can tell, that it may not be compatible with what some of the latest technology that's coming in or they may use. And I'm not saying it's not usable, but I'll just give you an instance. I have a camcorder bought in the 90s, and I have one that was bought after 2005, and you can't use them the same way. So that's all I have to say about it.
So is that?
So did
vote
you
a
vote
yes or
against
no?
it?
I'm voting against it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, just wanted to let you know why I'm voting against it.
Any other, we've already voted.
That's right.
I just wanted to make sure what his
All
vote
right.
was.
I didn't.
His
I
hand
wasn't
didn't go
still
up
reading.
anyway.
And Mr. Chairman, since our sheriff is here, if we might move over to the sheriff's budget to, because in the interest of time, come join us. The good news is, the sheriff and I have come to an agreement that we're gonna fully fund all of his vehicles this year.
Thank you.
Isn't that great?
Thank you, sir.
He'll disagree with you on something. Just give him time.
I'm waiting.
We, I think the sheriff has a recommendation for us in regards to possible additional reductions in expenditures.
And if, we're talking about our, detention facility, employees, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. In some discussion we made and had, over the past couple of days, we had asked and requested 28 detention facility employees. The recommendation from, the jail state was 32, but we asked for 28. In some discussion, we decided that if we could go ahead and maybe do it in phases rather than waiting until later, right at the time we were going to try to open the jail, it would be better. And also in those discussions, we decided that we possibly could go with 18 instead of the 28 initially to try to go ahead and get the 18 hired in phases and then reanalyze this thing as we got nearer to the opening of the jail, which may be or may not be July 1 of next year, depending on the construction process. In the end, it'll take 28 to run it, but we think over a period of time, we can hire it in phases rather than trying to do it all at one time, and I think it'll be more productive for us in that manner also.
And if I might, Mr. Wood, did we have a dollar figure that,
Yeah, we had talked about, there was roughly 450,000 in there for this. And we think with what the sheriff's talking about doing, we can cut that by 150,000. And so that would cut that to 300,000.
and that would be under which line item?
It's under the jail.
Under the jail?
It's salaries and fringes under the jail or detention center.
Do we have a tab for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
And also in my understanding that we were going to go ahead and budget this and leave the discretion to the sheriff on phasing those people in. That way he's got the flexibility of staffing them as he's able to hire them.
That will help, I think, yes, sir.
Could I ask one, sir? The training part for these new folks, do they go to school somewhere or?
They do. In general, most of the time, Wayne Community College has the training provided at the college. It takes, I believe it's a 10-week program for our detention staff. And then we like to have them at least with someone paired up for at least 2 to 3 months before we actually release them as a detention officer on their own.
I said the training is local, that's.
Yes, it is.
So if no one has any objections, I would move that we reduce the jail's budget on salaries and wages, which is line item one, if I'm correct here, 110-4311-121?
Yes, sir, it would be, the 150,000 would have to include the related benefits.
Yeah, so just say 150,000 for salaries and fringes,
Okay.
and that'll do it.
To reduce that line item by $150,000 to include fringes and benefits. Is that good? Okay.
Is that in form of a motion?
That is.
We have a motion on the floor. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor, show sign of right hand. Motion carries unanimous.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
let
Bell.
me mention something since the sheriff is here. I know we talked one time about, the swing open type doors. Now, I visit all the jails in this part of the state, and I have a chance to talk to all of the jail officials. And they're telling me, we don't want swinger, we need the sliding doors.
I guess we need to visit that again then. I was under the impression that the sliding doors were more, had more
Probably
intense
cost a little more.
maintenance.
Yeah, we've had a lot of problems with these sliding doors we've got. I think that's why we went with the open
Right.
with the swing.
And I don't know really what, the problem they're addressing when they're
They're
talking
talking about
about.
the safety factor, you
Okay,
know.
well, there is a safety factor, I guess, of someone taking control of that door and,
Yeah.
and beating you with it.
Right.
Actually, that is a possibility.
What I'd suggest there, if y'all are in agreement, is we can bring that up with the architect
Yeah.
and see what they think.
Okay.
Now, Mr. Chairman, if I might, as we had discussed, if I'm correct, we are wanting to equip, each one of the vehicles is budgeted to include a camera to go in the vehicle, on the new vehicles. And there are 12 of those, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
I think I shorted you one yesterday, but it's 12 today. But in addition, the sheriff wants to upgrade the cameras in his other vehicles as well, and that is in the budget. The portion of that we are going to forestall was the portion that would include the body cameras.
Correct.
And that would reduce it by, I think, 30, Pam, can you help me with that? I think it was around $35,000.
What line item is that?
I'm not sure which line item.
$795 apiece and, what, there 46 total.
34,500.
How much?
34,500.
$34,500. We felt like it was more important to go ahead and get the cameras in the vehicles, get those in place. But there again, that's up to the board in regards to the body cameras.
Let me ask the question, if you don't mind.
Certainly.
I hope nobody don't think that the body cam is just to peek in on the police officers. That's a safety issue too. It protects the police as well as it does anybody else. So, if I was out there, I believe I would want a body cam on, really. I think it's a good tool, because if you got 97.5% of your officers doing an outstanding job, and I believe they do, and you got 2% that's going to do some individual stuff, I believe you as sheriff would want to know about those guys, you know?
We have equipped our school resource officers with the body cams. These particular ones that we had requested in the budget actually sync up with your in-car camera. The problem with our current in-car cameras, they're so old, they're no longer supported by
Right.
technology. And so we're having to try to upgrade as we can. The body cams we were requesting with this does sync up with them. And it is, as we discussed yesterday in our work session, it is a two-edged sword. You know, a body camera basically looks ahead. If you have to activate it whenever you need it, if you hadn't activated your blue lights. Now, the ones that sync up with the ones we're requesting, actually, whenever you activate your blue lights, your in-car camera comes
Right.
on and your body cam comes on.
Right.
Then when you exit your vehicle, it is automatically on. Other times, if you don't have your blue lights on, then you have to manually activate it.
Well,
So,
go ahead.
if I hear you, it's not a good idea and a need, it was just $1.
Well, no, there's a number of reasons. One, we felt like it's more important to go ahead and get the cameras upgraded because there's a special going on right now. Is that correct? on
We can
training?
trade
So-
the current ones in and get.
But the other thing is, I don't think that everybody at this point has come to the conclusion that body cameras are that necessary here in Wayne County. In other words, it's almost like spending money to solve a problem that doesn't exist.
Well, that's, not to debate it, but that's probably what they thought in, those other places where all of a sudden they thought a body camera was needed. Now, unless Mount Olive has misled me, Mount Olive has body cameras. And, I think that's the impression that I got from them, that they have them. And, well, I've also lobbied for cameras on the poles too, but I don't know they ain't done all that. But the moment that we decide not to do something that we found as a problem someplace else, Murphy's Law say what can happen will happen. So I would not, if it's dollars, I would not want to see us back away from it because of dollars, because we're gonna, we spent money in cars and everything else. And, John, and sometimes I rely a little bit on what John Bell thinks, since he's, visits and deals with situations that some of us don't. I would not want us to not have something that protects the deputies, number one. You hear sometimes people are resisting and delaying. I kind of figure that that's some physical, something going on between the deputy and whomever else he's trying to deal with. And there's nothing like being able to know exactly what happened. And I would want us to consider making sure that both sides of the ledger are protected. Now, I know I think it's 97-98% of deputies is not going to do something beyond it, but I think as citizens we need to take every advantage of every piece of technology that's out there.
All right, Sheriff, I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Mr. Chairman, if I just, before I hate to interrupt the chairman, but I
That's
just
fine.
did, didn't I?
Yeah.
Do recognize there's another issue here we've got to recognize. We've got the IT guy here, and do recognize as you equip these body cameras, you are recording this, and you've got to store it somewhere. That additionally is going to add cost. So it's just not a matter of $34,000. There are other costs involved here. And then you get into legal issues, because if it's not activated, is there a possibility of a lawsuit because it failed to activate to record what occurred? And then there's interpretations of the recording. In other words, before we jump into this fire pit, let's test the temperature first. And I think what the idea here was, maybe let's get the cameras in the cars and let's have some more discussion in regards to the body cameras. Let's talk with IT. Let's find out what the true cost is going to be. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, you just hit part of what I was gonna ask the sheriff. You've got your body cameras on your school resource officers. The cameras in your cars need upgrading, and you've got some cars that don't even have cameras.
That's correct.
are you comfortable with the body cameras on the school resource officers and upgrading your existing cameras and putting new cameras in the rest of your vehicles? Do you feel comfortable with that? And let's address this body camera issue later.
That will be fine. We can phase it in as you see fit. I definitely want the car cameras, you know, because that has saved us several times. And so yes, I would be willing to do that with no problem.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Kamari.
I'm not excluding I'm not excluding cars in the camera. Cameras in the cars. But I hear you say that you have the body cameras on the school resource officers?
Yes, sir.
Well, I'd just like to ask this question out loud. Do you think that it's more dangerous at the school than it is on the streets?
Well, the reason, if I may, the reason I went ahead and bought those officers, because they're dealing with juveniles. And it's a situation that my child didn't do it. And that has saved us already in the last 6 months several times. And it's the same way in the public, whether it's in school or not. I will agree with that.
Right.
But, you know, I will be happy to phase them in as you see fit. I'll be happy to implement it whenever you do see fit.
One follow-up, not to you, but to the IT. There was a suggestion it was cost a lot to store this information. Is there some illegality about using them at all? What have you heard about the illegality of using them or storing them or whatever?
Well, one of the things that I want to bring to your attention is we have our current storage area network that stores all of the county's files right now is going to be replaced this coming fiscal year if it's approved in the budget. What we're going to do is take that's a production system. That's where all of our tax files or everything that we use on a daily basis. So it's critical that we have a system that is up to date, covered under warranties and all of that. The system that we're replacing, that is the storage area network that we're replacing, will no longer be a production system. So I don't know if I had specifically talked to the sheriff about this, but we have talked to some of the other individuals in the sheriff's office, that we can utilize that storage area network to store those video files because they're not a production system, they're just being stored. So we can continue to utilize the old storage area network that we're replacing, and at almost no cost to the sheriff or the county, provide them storage and without having to go and buy a new system, just for them. That's what that was my plan, anyways, to utilize that old system for that, and for other things, because it is a lot of space. That, you know, I think we have like 95 terabyte, and they need a lot of space when they're storing data like this, like with body cams. But as far as the storage, I don't think that's going to be a big expense at all. We may occasionally have to replace a hard drive or something like that. And of course, eventually, several years down the road, it may be to the point where we need to replace it with something else because it's just getting way too old. But I think initially, there'd be minimal impact as far as that cost.
So how much money are we talking about saving by delaying? Is that a dollar figure?
34,000.
34,000.
34,500.
Well, we saved 150,000 by delaying the officers coming in. And as I shared with Mount Olive when I was talking to them one day, I said, there's no replacement for a camera catching something, and he's gonna be watching. As long as you have it on, he's gonna be watching all the time. And a human will blink. A human will blink. Or maybe your attention is caught off by something else, but you can sort of figure that that camera's gonna catch a certain amount of angle there, and it's gonna be consistent. So, I'm just a proponent of, I love for us to be able to provide cameras on poles up and down 117 and in every municipality. Because Big Brother is watching. If you ain't got nothing to hide, then you don't have anything to hide. That's all I say.
Mr. Chairman, let me make a motion, and then we'll vote on this thing and
I was
move on.
on, I had it
Okay,
next.
I'm sorry.
I had it next.
Okay.
I had already raised my hand.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay. Listen, as I said from the outset, I don't think, I'll just talk from my perspective. I'm not talking about watching the police. I know it's a safety issue and it's a protection issue for the police officer. You know, there's nothing like knowing that a police did everything he's supposed to do and he did it right. And you shut people's mouths, you know what I mean? But whenever you're out there in the dark, and I've been out there in the dark many, many times, and it's good to know that you can flip on a little button and the sheriff can look, say, yeah, you did everything right. You know, so I think it's important that we consider that, maybe not now, but, you know,
Yes.
as you say, phase it in as we go along, you know.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Darby.
Okay, Mr. Doyle.
Based upon the discussions here and the concurrence of our sheriff, I would move that we remove the $34,500 for body cameras in this fiscal year, do some discussion and discovery, and then look at it at possibly our next fiscal year, but that we remove it from the budget this year. What line item was that, Pam?
110, 4310. We've got the 46 cameras and 510, but are we taking the cameras out of the 12 cars also?
No.
No,
We're gonna leave the body cameras in the
Just-
12 cars.
Well, no, the body cameras are out, all the way out. In other words, we're not buying any more body cameras.
So-
The 46 includes
The 12 cars.
the 12
Okay,
cars.
Okay, gotcha. It's 34,500 then.
$34,500,
What
and that
was
was
the
line
number?
item
110, 4310, 510.
510.
I would like to correct,
I don't
I just
see-
want to
I
be
don't
sure
see
something,
it.
Mr. Chairman.
Is that under the jail?
No,
It's under
I'm
the
sorry.
sheriff.
Under the sheriff. Back up one.
Ms. Ho,
Yes, sir.
is this for the body cameras only?
4310.
It's only for the body cameras. The
All right.
total cost is 5,331, so
I
we'll,
just want to make sure that what we're voting on is for the body cameras only.
the car cameras we're leaving in.
That's right.
What was that last three digits again?
510, 510.
Okay. Have a motion on the floor. Any other discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would like
Mr. Bell.
to amend the motion at the appropriate time. You ready for my amendment?
We got to have your amendment before we vote on it.
No, we got to vote on my amendment first.
I know. What is your amendment?
Okay, my amendment is, that if we delay the body cams now, that we will phase them in as our sheriff, law enforcement, see fit, not the commissioners.
So then we need to put that money in, so that money would need to be contingently put in.
Y'all sure know how to make things complicated.
Are you making that motion based upon next year's budget?
Well, the sheriff knows what he need over there. And I think that we ought to go to him and find out what he need instead of us just making a blanket decision as to cut part of his budget out without him having an input.
I understand, but we had his input, and he's okay with it for this year.
But he only,
Well, when
he
you
only
say we had,
accepted.
so you mean prior to the date, you mean, you had his input, you're talking about the input
No,
we
he
have
just,
right now?
yeah, he just had some.
I just asked him questions.
No, okay, I didn't know which,
Which input?
I didn't know which input Mr. Bedard was talking about, was this, because you did have it in the
Does that
original
make
budget.
sense?
Yes, sir.
You had it in the original budget,
Yes, sir.
so that means this discussion caused it to be backed out.
That's what I'm talking about.
I think that's what, cause that would mean that you had it in, and the discussion with the commissioners is pulling it out. And if I misunderstand, John, I'm sorry, but it sounds like you did not want those kind of things to be pulled out at our discretion if the sheriff said that he needed it.
That's right.
And since he originally had it in, it sounded like he needed it. And I want to throw this in. Sheriff, and I don't want to complicate this, but if something happens out there that we wish we'd have had, because that is the way the nation seems to be going, then the eye was cast back in your direction, but you originally said you wanted.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Pate.
it sounded like there was some additional discussion between one commissioner, at least the sheriff, he's okay. Am I to understand that?
I mean, I just
It is,
asked a question, I mean.
Man said there and told us he was good with it, so I'm, you know. He said he was good with it. Okay.
He's okay with it, John, until next year, he's okay. Please approve your amendment, let's vote on my motion, move on.
But Mr. Doherty, he may see the need to have them next month.
Well, then we can do a budget, we can always do a budget.
That's why I said at the sheriff's
If
discretion.
If he sees it, it is that important, believe me, we'll fund it.
But if it was put in there originally, then that meant there was some discussion at some level that they need to have been done now.
Instead of discretion.
That's all.
Instead of
Is
the
that
sheriff's
true or not?
discretion, at the sheriff's recommendation, I put it that way, Mr. Doherty.
I do need to correct something. There are actually 47 in the budget instead of the 46 that we had thought there were, so there's 47.
And the amount,
The amount will be $35,250.
35,000. Okay.
35,250. That's correct.
Can you clarify your amendment?
Yeah, I just said at the sheriff's recommendation, that he will, we should, if the sheriff comes to us next month and said he need those body cams, then we should take it back up again, not just.
We'll take it back up at that
not-
time.
Not leave it to next year's
We'll
budget.
reconsider it that time.
Okay.
You all right with that?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. We're fine with reconsider. We're always open to reconsider.
I have a motion and an amendment on the floor from Mr. Bell. Any discussion? If no discussion, all in favor show sign of right hand. Motion carries.
With the amendment. That was just the amendment.
Just for the amendment.
All right.
Now I have a motion on the floor from Mr. Doherty. Any other discussion on that? If none, all in favor show sign of right hand. All opposed? 5 and 2, Ms. Marshall.
Oh, my goodness.
Mr. Martin, Mr. Bell.
We're still friends, John.
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah, always.
Okay.
I'm through, Sheriff. Everybody got anything else?
Anybody else got anything for the sheriff?
Can we get body cams too?
My question is, can you take your concealed weapon permit money and your fingerprint funds and get your body cameras?
I will use some of that for that if that's necessary.
Well, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Sheriff.
Thank you, Mr. Sheriff.
Thank you, Larry.
And Mr. Chairman, if we could go to the IT since we've got Stephen Cross here.
I know what I'm saying. We do not want to put him in the code.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, to lead into this, anytime anybody wants to write out $1 million in the budget, I think you've got some explaining to do.
Mr. Taylor,
I
IT.
think that what the question came up when we were discussing this.
42
with some of the
teams.
Commissioners, I think they'd like a better understanding of the virtualization and the storage that you just talked about. In other words, what is it you're trying to accomplish with this amount of money? And I want to be clear, the way you had it in the CIP, you'd split it over 5 years.
Yes.
What I did in putting it in the budget is I gave you the full $740,000 to buy it, but Pam's gonna finance it over the 5 years.
Okay.
So the full 740 is in there, so they wanna understand exactly what you're doing, where you're trying to get to with everything and why you need it.
Okay. I'll try to explain at a high enough level so they don't get too much down into the weeds. But essentially, we have our virtual environment. When we initiated it or implemented it, it was a project that we just went out. We purchased all the servers, we purchased the storage area network, and we purchased all the software and everything that we needed to implement that project. So it was a one-time big expense. Now, we had two separate projects. We had desktop virtualization and we had server virtualization, two completely different animals. However, we implemented them very closely together. So we have our equipment going end of life. And the software that we use to virtualize is the most current software that is not, we can't even use it on our existing equipment. As a matter of fact, we're 2 versions behind? 3 versions behind right now. Because of that, because we're so far behind in the versions, Citrix will not allow, they won't support our virtualization software or equipment until we upgrade our equipment. And that's one of the main problems we're having, is the fact that our equipment is aging out, and not only that, the software that is on the equipment is dictating that we move to a newer equipment. We can't move to that we can't move to the newer software until we have newer equipment, essentially. So prior to virtualization, we had 62 servers. We had no servers for desktops. We had 62 servers just to run all of the software that we have in Wayne County. So those servers were purchased at various times. So we might have 2 or 3 servers one year that need to be replaced, 4 or 5 servers another year, but they were not the very high-end servers that virtualization requires. So virtualization servers are very expensive, even though you're buying a lot fewer. So the bottom line is, we don't have to replace 62 servers now. What we have to replace is 10. We have to replace 10 servers, and we have to replace them together, because the whole system is a unit. You can't just replace 2 or 3 and then 2 or 3 and 2 or 3. They all have to be the same model, same version, same processor, same amount of memory. They have to be identical the way that that system works. So you're going to have a lump sum when you do a refresh, because of the way the system is designed. It's not spread out over a period of time. Like when we had 62 servers, we had to replace, whenever they came end of life, we replaced them. But we never were at a point where we had to replace 62 servers. If that was the case, it'd be a lot of money. But under the new virtualization scheme, we eliminated 52 servers. So we don't have that expense. We don't have that hardware expense. We don't have the maintenance of having to deal with those 52 servers. We're just having to deal with the 10 servers for our server virtualization farm. Now, those 52 servers didn't go away. They're virtualized. Basically, when you virtualize a server, it's almost like a file format. It's not a physical device. It's all virtualized. I can say, I can allocate as much processor I want to a particular virtual server. I can allocate memory. I can allocate whatever resources that server needs. Instead of, in the old days, if we needed more resources to run an application like GEMS or something, we'd have to buy a new server or buy more memory or buy a new processor or whatever it took to upgrade that equipment to get it to run. With virtualization, we buy these high-end servers with all this memory and this lot of processing power. Then we can just allocate what we need virtually to each one of our servers to run the to run the software that we have. So it's far more efficient, far more cost-effective, but the appearance is it's a lot more money. And the reality is, like server virtualization saves about, I want to say, was it 45%?
Typically that or more.
Yeah, it was at least 45% cost savings over the old system. So,
Can I interrupt you? So I'm making sure I'm understanding. In other words, if we were replacing the old system, going to this first virtualization, we would have about a 45% saving over buying the two systems.
Yes.
You would save the money with virtualization
45% less money to do virtualization than if you use the old type hardware configuration.
That's important.
It is important. The issue,
People recognize by spending the money, we're actually saving money.
that's right.
And that's the point I'm trying to.
But his
Yes.
problem is, when you do these, you have to do it all at one time.
Yeah. In the old system, you would have a server with a specific purpose. You might have a server for finance that just ran gems. And if that server failed, that system would be down until we replaced the server or repaired the server and got them back up and running. With virtualization, this is another added benefit. All of these servers work in unison, so if a particular physical virtual server fails, because we have 10 physical servers that run all of these, it automatically will reboot and restart her application on one of the other servers. So you have maybe a 5-minute downtime versus days, potentially. So there's a lot of benefits to it, and there's a lot of savings that we really can't calculate. But
Then one other question if I could, and that is, on the old system, you're saying you're gonna be using that as we phase in the body cameras for storage and that type of thing?
yeah, now let me explain. Virtualization, we have the servers. That's the engine that basically provides the horsepower to run all of our software. Our storage area network, which is all part of virtualization, or also called a SAN, is really just a multiple stacks of hard drives that are a very intelligent system that stores all the information on all of those servers. So previously, you had a hard drive in every single one of those 62 servers, and all the information was stored individually on 62 separate devices. Now it's all stored centrally on one device called a storage area network. So, and that's really important because that SAN, without the SAN, you can't be virtualized. You have to have centralized storage to be virtualized. So, when you replace the servers and the SAN, you're replacing the virtual environment essentially. And the way that, because we bought everything all together, now I can tell you right now, do I think our servers cannot handle what we're doing right now? No, they can. The problem is not whether or not the hardware is still working effectively. The problem is the manufacturers will not support it anymore. And if we have a failure and I don't get this equipment replaced, I won't have a job. Because Wayne County's gonna lose a lot of data and they're gonna lose a lot of money. So, that's why, I've got it in the budget to make sure that that doesn't happen, that we have the support, we have the engineers and the components to replace anything that's damaged on the newer equipment. The older equipment, the hardware manufacturers will not support it anymore. And that's why we have to move forward.
But the investment that has been made in the existing servers,
Yes.
okay? I mean, basically, we're gonna replace all of that.
Yep.
Now that we have that leftover capacity, are we using it for something, or are we just surplusing?
No, we're not gonna surplus our storage area network, and we had, Chris Stone, Chris Cowan, and George and I have talked about this. We have a lot of storage capacity there, and the SAN is perfectly good. The problem is, it's out of warranty. It's at end of life. They won't support it anymore. So in a production environment, that's really bad, because if something happens, and we have our tax data on there, and they won't help us. There's nothing we can do. If we can't get a part to replace it, or an engineer to help us resolve an issue, then it could potentially be disastrous for us. So,
Steve, explain what you mean by production.
okay. When I say production, I mean that it's actually holding all of the information that we use to run Wayne County every day.
So it's the information that's being accessed on
It's
the
information that's being accessed currently. It's our primary system that operates all of our equipment, all of our software in Wayne County on a daily basis. So when I say production system, that's what I'm really referring to. It's the system that's critical, that it has to be up and running. The difference between that and the SAN that we're replacing, that SAN will not be a production system anymore. They'll have all this storage, and where the sheriff needs to have storage space, Well, it's not a production, he doesn't need a production system with all kinds of warranties and stuff like that, just to store files. So we can store those files on the storage area network and not really have to, if we have a disk failure or whatever, we just, so we lose a little capacity, we're gonna keep right on running. We're gonna keep on the ability to store files for him. But we don't have to worry about losing data for the entire county because it's no longer under warranty.
All right, one last question.
Whenever it gets through, I'm not asking.
Okay. Go ahead, you got a question.
No, I'm just gonna ask, you got the new central thing you're putting in, but the other older servers were still out there that uses putting data on them. Save it, is that gonna be where your backup is? If your equipment failed, where's that data gonna be?
Are you
I'm not asking
referring
the question
to,
right.
are you referring to the other 52 servers?
Yeah, you said they're not going away, and they're gonna still be sitting out there.
Well, physical servers, the actual,
Yeah, right.
they're gone. They don't have them
I'm
anymore.
not through.
Well, he's down to 10, he's down to 10.
I'm down to 10 now.
Okay.
10
I think
physical
your
servers.
question, I think Bill's question is, what about those 10? What happens to those 10?
Yeah, that's my
if we get
question.
new servers?
Oh, yeah, some of those servers, Chris, you can probably speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, now I'm confused because I thought you said earlier that we were gonna keep the old equipment and use it for storage.
The storage area network,
The SAN.
the SAN.
There's a
That's
SAN.
not the
and-
new,
There will be some of the servers in the server farm that we will maintain, but it's gonna be for non-critical data such as storage from video cameras.
Sure.
Right.
And so that being non-critical will be backed up. If we have a situation where we have a failure and there's downtime, then we've got the data on backup, we can recover it. But this would allow us, using the old equipment that is no longer supported out of warranty, it'll allow us large capacities of storage, but out of those 10 servers in that server farm, we'll probably keep 2 or 3 just to run some of these virtual servers to house data only. We won't need the workhorse, all of the power of all 10 servers in that farm. Those other 10 servers, we will have to look and see if there's any other need for them. They may go to surplus, but we will keep a few of them, like I said, just for long-term storage, for such as video data.
So you use part of the servers and all of the old SAN.
All of the old SAN,
Which
yes.
is the server area network. That's the big box he's talking about, the stores.
But once that system dies,
I just wanna make sure.
It would
all
be
my stuff
visually
is backed up.
easier for
Yeah.
me to show you.
I
So
wish-
if you guys would ever want a tour, I could actually physically show you what
I'd
we're
like to see
talking about.
the new stuff, I really.
Yeah,
would.
yeah, I
And,
can-
my other question was, what is the estimated life of this new move, of this equipment?
It's,
I mean, I know technology
if you
changes
talk to
quickly.
the industry standard, they're gonna tell you 3 years. We can't, the county cannot sustain 3 years.
Well, that was going to my point of, the much we're spending here, we're gonna be back here in 3 years
Our-
doing it again.
Typically, previously, it was 5 years. We tried to hold the standard at 7 years. The 7 years has bit us in the butt because, excuse my language, because now the standard is 3 years. And the reason for that is technology every year moves so much faster and the software drives the hardware. So as more and more applications are developed, we're using these high-end computer systems, they become smarter and smarter and smarter. It becomes almost impossible to keep up with it. So what we're doing is, at the end of we try to go 5 years. So your answer is 5 years for the county. We would love for it to go longer, and we do in every instance that we can. We push it. If it's not a system that we absolutely, we could get away with it, we'll push it as far as we can go.
we're coming up on 6 years with our current equipment.
Yeah, there's 6 years now. Bill, and we're budgeting this, we're financing this over 5 years. So our intent is to go at least 5 years.
well, I'd hope it lasts that long.
Well, we do too.
Yeah, and again, the equipment,
pretty large expense.
will not be at the end of 5 years. It's not the equipment that's the problem. Well, it is, technically.
It's both, support.
The support, because manufacturers will go end of life on the hardware, but the software drives the hardware. And it'll get to a point where the software will not work.
And unfortunately, when we replace our hardware, we're gonna be in the same situation in 3.5 years we're in now, where the company that writes the software for the virtual environment will no longer support the new hardware we're gonna be buying in the next few months. So we'll be in the same boat because we cannot replace hardware.
Great business plan for them.
It is. It's planned obsolescence. They ensure that they're gonna,
And-
sell more software.
And the problem is, if you don't go with that company, you go with another one.
They do the same
It's
thing.
the same thing.
Same thing.
I'm not questioning the fact that we need to move it.
Right. Well, our intent is to get at least 5 years out of it.
Yeah.
But that's not to say that we won't start running into some issues, but as Chris said, we're already in year 6 now.
Now,
Have you considered, or have you done cost analysis on lease versus purchase that comes with automatic upgrades every year?
leasing our servers,
And software, the whole package.
That brings up a unique set of problems. Sometimes our workload doesn't allow us to coincide with replacements, because this whole project of replacing the hardware for our server farm as well as our virtualization application farm, that's gonna be a minimum 6, 7, 8 month project. Because building up a new farm, having to migrate our existing production servers from the old farm to the new farm is an extremely tedious, long process. And with leasing, typical leases are like 3 years. And trying to do a project of that magnitude every 3 years, we just don't have the manpower.
yeah, one of the problems with leasing, and I know when I first got here, we were leasing computer systems for the county. But it's not as cost-effective as you might think. Because computers age out very quickly. And when you do get to end of life on these computer systems, you have to package them up and mail them back to the manufacturer. They don't let you keep them. And then you release, and there's a lot of costs associated with all of that. Not only that, the manpower trying to do that, whereas if we have our own systems, we don't have to worry about that. But the other part of virtualization, I only talked about the server side, which holds the applications for like GEMS and tax system and things like that. The other part of virtualization, which is all part of this project, is our desktop virtualization. We have 12 servers in that farm. So our virtualization total, including desktop and servers, is 22 servers that run both farms. Now, the desktop side is far more complicated than the server side to implement. But instead of buying a computer system, for instance, if we buy a computer system now, which we still have to buy computers because we have computers that we are not virtualized, or we can't virtualize for whatever reason, we're going to purchase a computer that has a 5-year warranty, because we want to make sure that if anything goes wrong with it, they'll replace the motherboard or the hard drive or whatever, it's under warranty. So we pay for a 5-year warranty. We'll replace the monitor, and all that stuff. So you're looking at probably anywhere between, and the price fluctuates almost month to month, but I'm going to say between $1,000 and $1,200. If it's a high-end system, it'll be $1,500. Now you multiply that by 850 computers. That's a lot of money. Not only that, those computer systems have to be imaged. When we get them, we just don't put them on somebody's desk and plug it in and say go. We have to install all of our software. We have to install all of our security software and our systems and our antivirus and all these other things, all the applications associated with that particular department, all of these other things. There's a lot of work with a computer system. In the virtual environment, we use thin clients instead of computers. Thin clients can range from $250 to a very high end, which we don't have many of those, we only have a few of those, to up to maybe $600. But the majority of our thin clients are just under $300 for the device. And so in comparison to the cost of a desktop, it's significantly less, and it uses 1/7 the electricity, produces almost no heat, so it reduces cooling costs. There's no hardware failure, there's no moving parts in these devices.
Let me
so-
interrupt you there. Did I hear you say it hardly produced any heat?
Yes. Almost no
Aren't we
heat.
spending some money to air condition?
Yeah, but remember, those are desktops, they're diffused out into the workforce.
No, I'm talking about
I know,
our
the
new
server
system,
but the-
servers and so forth.
But the server farm is not thin clients.
That's in the data room. His stuff's gonna be in a central location. He's talking about thin clients now on each desk.
Cutting through the chase here. This current system that we have, I assume that you compare the cost of replacing what we have with what we have versus stepping up to the
Virtualization.
virtualization.
Yeah.
uh,
I actually have
Did
I
you
actually
compare
have,
those?
I actually have a document, when I was working on my master's degree, I did my thesis on virtualization of Wayne County. And I did all the cost comparisons, and it's got all the information on how much money we saved in electricity, how much money we saved in hardware costs, software costs. Just everything is laid out in this, and I know I've got it on our shared drive. Of course, it's
a
5 years old now,
Yeah,
but
without too much difficulty. I mean, I'm just saying, with what we're going with, I take it we're going with buying a Cadillac. And I'm gonna compare it to maybe what we currently have is a Chevy.
no, what we currently have is a Cadillac, and we're buying a Cadillac.
So you got a Cadillac now, we're gonna buy another Cadillac.
Yes, exactly.
But we are upgrading our system in doing this, are we not?
We're replacing the outdated computers, yes.
We're replacing
Continue to
the outdated.
upgrade the
Right.
software, which is called a hypervisor. It's the virtualization software itself. Because at this point, we can't get support from Citrix if we have a problem because we're not on a supported product.
But they do have replacements parts for that, and I'm just saying, if we were upgrading our current configuration with new servers,
Yes.
have you priced that out versus what we're going with here?
I didn't
Well-
understand your question. Would you ask that again?
I almost feel like I'm getting into
Clouds.
outer space here. Y'all live in y'all's world and I live in
Oh, I
mine.
know, I know.
It's difficult for the two to communicate, but, they do. But what I'm trying to say is this, you have hardware in a system currently.
Yes.
We're replacing it.
We're replacing it
We're
because it's
replacing it.
outdated, yeah.
Right.
If you replaced what you had to today's technology using that same system.
Yes.
Have you priced that, and on the alternative, price the system that you are recommending that we go to?
Well, I think, if I'm understanding your question, I think the answer is he is pricing what the replacement is.
Is that correct?
Yes. We actually could have gone to a system that was far more money, a lot more money, that would have given us disaster avoidance. And I know that's difficult to explain.
It's another
It's
300-something thousand.
Yeah, it would have been another 300,000. We didn't go
Let
with
me
the most
rephrase my
expensive
question.
system.
Okay? When John Q. Public comes to me and says, why did you spend $885,000? I need to have an answer.
It's because-
We all need to have an
Right.
answer. Tell me where we saved money by going with this that will last for 5 years. Give me some information that John Q. Public's gonna ask,
Okay.
okay?
Essentially, whenever you're looking at information technology, when you're looking at the infrastructure, you always want to look at 5 years. You don't want to look at, oh, we spent 800,000 this year. How come? And the reason being, when you spread it out over 5 years, you're going to see a significant cost savings, especially if we have to replace, every 5 years you have to replace, and here's a good example. Every 5 years you have to replace your servers. I mean, you have to. Because if you don't, then you're going to fall behind, the software's not going to work, so on. And then you end up getting yourself in trouble because you can't keep up with, what you've got. So you have to systematically replace your equipment. So let's go back to 62 servers. If I priced out 62 servers for what we are pricing out 10 servers in a storage area network now, it would be a significant cost savings over a 5-year period. Because the same 5-year period that we're spending the money on virtualization is the same 5-year period we would be replacing 62 servers. We wouldn't be replacing all 62 in 1 year. Over a 5-year period, we would be replacing 62 servers. So, and I don't have those numbers in front of me, but if I were to replace those,
I think what he's.
Steve, you need to get out of the office more often because we don't communicate.
Okay, let me see if I can capsule this, okay? I think what he's saying is that before we virtualized, which is what we have now, okay, with the 10 servers, and then he has the thin clients on the desktop virtualization. Before he did that, he had all these multiple servers, okay, which you would have had to have 62.
That was back in 2009.
Back in 2009. So where the savings is when we converted back in 2009 to this virtualization, you made a tremendous cost savings, okay? And what he's saying today is he needs to replace this because it's outdated and it's no longer being supported and all of that. And it's been 6 years. So you're replacing the virtualization stuff that you have with newer equipment, the latest version of the software and all that. To answer your question is, the cost comparison would be, what if you went away from virtualization back to what you had? His answer to that is it would cost you far more. Significantly more. So we're headed in the right direction. I think the key is that because you have to do this stuff simultaneously, the way to do it is to finance it over a 5-year period, because you've got to get it. He can't get the upgraded software until he gets the upgraded hardware, and it all has to work in tandem. So you go ahead and get it, but we'll pay for it over a 5-year period, the same as if in the old days you would have replaced so many computers each year.
So in other words, for the future, it's gonna always be a 200,000 plus for IT infrastructure, basically.
In essence, Joe, you're right, because, and that's why I'm trying to finance it, because what I'm trying to do is get it built into the budget. None of us likes it, but I look at it like patrol cars or ambulances. You gotta replace so many every year. So there's gotta be a certain amount of money in there every year. You hit the nail on the head.
It's kind of like for us, it would be analogous to if you bought a car, and at the end of 5 years, they weren't making parts for that car anymore, and mechanics said, it's outdated, we don't work on that anymore. I'm sorry, we can't help you. It's broke down, you're gonna have to replace it.
All right, here's my only question. In that car that you just bought, my question is there anything in this $882,000 that is the super duper stereo that you added to that you really don't need? That's my
No.
question.
no, there is.
Everything in here is absolutely
Well, we
necessary.
cut the super duper stereo.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
well-
I brought the super duper stuff to Mr. Wood and he told me
He
no.
cut it. Okay, I just wanted to make sure there's no
Well,
super duper.
well, no, I want to be clear about that.
Okay.
What you could have is an additional, I call it an additional SAN, which is if everything goes, you know where, that we then can have a recovery immediately with that. And that would have been another roughly 300,000 if I remember right.
Yeah.
350,000. I said no, I'm not gonna do that. And that's a risk management decision. I mean, you know, I may live to regret it. We may be down for 3 days one day and you guys be ready to shoot me. But for $350,000, I think we could be down for 2 or 3 days.
What the super duper system that you described would do is essentially, that system, if the courthouse burned down, all of our 22 servers, 12 for desktop virtualization, 10 for server virtualization, are located right here.
Right.
We would lose all of it. The system that we were looking at would allow us to take half of those servers and keep them here, and the other half would be over in another location. And it's a system that's specifically designed for disaster avoidance. They say avoidance instead of recovery because if our courthouse burned down, now with our existing configuration, we do have disaster recovery SAN. We have servers over there where we can recover critical systems in minimal time. But it would take us months to rebuild the infrastructure and to put all the circuits and all of the equipment and reconfiguration and restoration to get where we are right now.
But we
So-
wouldn't lose all the data.
Yeah,
It
we
would just
wouldn't
take
lose
him
any of
a-
the data.
it would take him a
because
long time to
We do back it
rebuild.
up. But the super duper system, basically what it does, it helps you in a disaster where you can recover extremely fast. And that's but we dropped that portion of it.
So I don't know if I helped or confused you.
Mr. Daughtry? I promise, just, yes.
Can I add something in there? One thing, you know that tax office is going with a brand-new NCPTS program, right? No, if we had to buy them servers for that stuff, that would've been $50,000, we'd have to ask you. We don't have to ask you. We have the environmental support right now. We just saved you $50,000 right there alone.
Just for that
That's a
one
good
project.
point.
Because of virtual, we just saved you instantly this fiscal year.
It's because of that paying.
That what?
Paying.
Okay. What, I'm sorry, I said one last question, but there was one more question. In here, there is $88,000 that I am just got real heartburn on, that we are spending to add air conditioning for,
Okay, let him explain the inline.
explain why we're having to spend $88,000.
Talking about the
That's a whole lot of
inline
air
cooler.
conditioners we could buy to add cooling capacity to these servers that we have that are not supposed to generate any heat.
No, the servers generate a lot of heat.
Oh, the they
It's
do.
thin
What he
client.
was referring to was the 800 desktop computers that are distributed throughout all
Oh,
the
okay,
buildings.
that's what he was referring to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The thin clients only use 5 watts of power as opposed to 60+ watts of power, on a desktop computer. So the electrical savings, by going to virtualization for applications is about 70%.
But why would we be having to spend $88,000 to cool the room where all this is? I mean, that's a lot of money.
Right now, we have 2 inline air coolers.
Inline
We have the
air
building air,
Yeah.
and we have an old air conditioner that was there when this building was built, and the only thing the room housed was a mainframe.
Okay.
The old data air unit has been refurbished 3 times, and it continues to be inefficient and cannot handle the load. So we have certain times in which our server room overheats. So before we have a situation, we've had one situation last year where the building air went down, it started blowing hot air, and the server room overheated to the point that we had servers going into thermal shutdown. That means they got too hot and automatically shut themselves down.
Right.
So the 2 inline air coolers, when the data air unit failed and the building air failed, could not handle the workload. That's why we need to add the 2 additional new inline air coolers and pull the old data air unit out.
And the other thing that precipitated was, that's when we started looking about this issue about the emergency generator too. Because, if we lose power, then we need to be able to get back, because this is the guts of our entire system.
As you build these, the expenses just keep adding and adding. I mean, it just does.
Well, it costs money to run a data center.
Well, I realize that.
And you have to
That's the
protect,
understatement
you have to
today.
protect your equipment through
Oh, I
cooling.
agree. We do.
And,
Okay, I'm okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Can I have my book?
yes, sir.
It's designed for it to cost.
And Pam Holt has one of our thin clients right here. I don't know if you guys have ever noticed it, but that's what she's using instead of a desktop computer.
Okay. All right.
I'm sorry, I'm sure all of y'all had questions. Go ahead and ask.
Anyone having questions?
You need a motion?
I would love to show any of you guys,
Well, I think what we were talking about is one of these days when we don't have a long
Yeah.
meeting, and you and I discuss this, I'd like to take about a 1-hour segment, Mr. Chairman, if that's agreeable with y'all. It's on the 4th floor. Yeah, it's the 4th floor, excuse me. And I think it would be good for you to see everything, plus what he's talking about.
What temperature do you try to keep that room?
We try to keep it at 72 degrees. If you go to a lot of other data centers, they'll try to keep it at like 50. No, 62
Well,
or
I've
64
been, back in the
degrees.
80s, I've been down that route.
Yeah, well, ideally, the temperature that you need to keep a data center is around 72 degrees. And that's a perfect temperature. It's not freezing in there. If you go in our data center, we're not like killing the air conditioning system. These systems that we actually have are very efficient. They're not like the old data unit, which just blows 100% 24 hours a day. These systems only cool when they need to be cooling, and they're very efficient. But when it's 95 degrees outside and one of them fails, which happens, then like anybody's air conditioning unit might fail in the summertime, then the other one can't handle the workload, and that's when we have the problem.
Okay. Any other questions?
You want a break?
I want a 5-minute break. Give you a 5-minute break because y'all gonna take 10.
Mr. Chairman, could I mention one thing, please?
Yes, sir.
There had been some talk, I didn't know if it was joking or not, about adopting it with these changes today. We can't do that because the statute says that not earlier than 10 days after I've presented it. You can't vote on it until earlier than 10 days after I presented it. I presented it on the 28th.
Okay.
So
We won't gonna vote on it today, you know.
well, I didn't know.
We're gonna vote
At
his
lunch, I
motion
heard a
down.
couple of people say something. I just wanted to make it clear we can't do that today.
We're still chasing these cats.
I know, and Joe still kidding me about 5 days, so he's still got, so you got 2 more weeks.
You did rush it. Next year it's gotta be 2 weeks. You have 4 months, 2 weeks.
All right.
I have a question, Mr. Wood. Are you gonna spend a day with each one of us like you're doing with Joe today?
I'm here to answer your questions.
Let's take a 10-minute break.
I'll leave it at that.
Well, see, what happened is after Joe get through with all these cuts, we gotta go back and look at what he said and then refute.
Well, that's true.
We're back in session. Okay, gentlemen, I need to bring something to your attention before we get started back. As y'all remember, last year, we spent a lot of money on this recording system that we're using today, and it's not being used properly. We're not speaking loud enough, and we're not being heard. Mr. Marty, your microphone's pointed right straight up in the air. But really, we pride ourselves in our TV station, but if the people that's watching it can't hear us, we've defeated our purpose. So let's try to do a little better on speaking into our microphone, please.
Okay.
All right,
spit on that, don't take
Mr. Wood, what's next?
Well, does anybody else have any questions or comments?
Have we got anybody else coming in?
I believe those were the only 2 you asked to see.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Norton.
You ready for my next motion?
No.
We can't vote on it today, John.
What?
I'm just looking to see where you're at.
I'm not anywhere in particular. I'm trying to pick my words correctly here and trying to find the right words. The community over the last few years have expressed a great deal of interest in Watch. And we've had a number of conversations, and they've been some discussions. That said, I wish that we had had a little bit more of a harmonious discussions over this issue. I wish that the board had in fact come to us and recognized the fact that this is a voluntary contribution on the part of the commissioners in funding Watch. and found a way to work with us for us to remove ourselves as a funding of that agency. That should be a private entity raising their funds from somewhere other than the county. That said, Watch, I suppose I've been misunderstood. Watch is a great program and provides a great deal of services to those that are in much need. And I do not want to unduly harm Watch or to cause them in any way to have to move to the point of closing down. So in that interest, I would move that we change the manager's recommendation and in essence fund $100,000 to Watch for this current year with the understanding that they will seek funding elsewhere, giving them some time to find that additional funding. And I make that in form of a motion.
I have a motion on the floor. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Please.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
There's been some communications the last few days, as some of you commissioners are aware. And you know what the shame is? The shame is that we couldn't have done this 5 or 6 months ago.
I agree.
Because all of us have good intentions. We support Watch. Legally, I understand that the county's in the right. But I'm in favor of Commissioner Daughter's motion for this reason. I don't want to see us defund Watch all at one time. If you remember early on, we talked about a possible step down. You remember that?
We do.
So what I'm saying is, because of all the rhetoric and the miscommunication and all this, I think the communications have been closed, basically, over the last couple of weeks. And all of a sudden, there were some people that got interested in saying, hey, look, let's see if we can work together. And so I just want to say that I support Commissioner Daughter's motion. And what is the total that we were funding?
220.
220, so you're saying
100.
100? What about if we take half of that?
Is that in the form of an amendment?
I would like to do that if it's okay, to make it even numbers.
I accept that, and I will amend my motion to 110.
Okay, any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Payton?
I don't disagree at all. We talked about that in the beginning about stepping it down, because there's no one up here on this board, I believe, that wants to see this mission stop, because it's a great mission that Watch has. I haven't said that, like I said earlier today, you know, we were at odds with the city many, many years on things that we would do, but we finally got down and got to talking, and that's been the problem. We've not been communicating, not necessarily miscommunicating, just not communicating. You know, you can't just draw a line in the sand and say, you've got to give us this money, because legally we don't. But I want to make sure these people receive medical treatment out there, because regardless of what we're saying, everybody doesn't have insurance, and obviously the Affordable Care Act has its shortcomings, as we all know. So I'm going to support this, but to be sure that they know that this is where we're stepping back and letting them know in the future they need to find different funding sources.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah,
Oh, go ahead.
I agree, Mr. Chairman, and as Ms. Daughter said earlier, we need continuous harmonious communications over the next 6, 7, 8, 9 months to do a clear evaluation and have some open discussion and dialogue with it, to make sure that we are doing the right thing for our citizens.
Mr.
Anyone
Chairman.
else? Mr. Camardi?
I'd like to thank this group for moving to in that direction. I've had discussions with folk over the last 2 or 3 weeks. I've had them to call me And I think a lady who I returned the call to last night, folks, she's watching this one of these, she'll understand that we're all in concert about the good things that Watch has done. And we want to make sure that folk who are in need of this service as some primary care gets that service. I'd like to take you back probably some 2 or 3 years before I got on the board. My predecessor, J.D. Evans, picked me up one day to show me, quote unquote, the Watch van. And there was a line of people waiting to go in there to be served. And he was very strong on this. And so I recognize the fact that a lot of folk prior to us arriving at this station thought it was a good idea to have it. Now, I will say this publicly, that I always associated Watch with that van. And some of the other things that it has grown to probably has increased the cost. I would not want to put a time limit on how long this board would continue to support an effort. I would like to be sure that we were moving towards the original intent and the original folk that it served. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Bailey?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, before I amend Commissioner Doty's motion, I'm not gonna do that to you.
I appreciate it.
I agree. I received so many calls about this Watch situation. It's pathetic how many calls I received over the past 2 weeks. And even to the point to where I was receiving some kind of political threats, you know what I mean? And, but that didn't bother me. That's not helping me make a decision as far as whether I vote for it or against it. But I think it is a good idea that we do something, and I concur.
Anyone else? All right, I'm gonna be the bad guy today. We're gonna cut, Mr. Darty's proposal or motion is to fund Watch with half of what they had asked for and what we have been doing in the past. The other nonprofit that we've been dealing on for quite some time today, if we're gonna cut Watch, we need to be fair and cut another one. We can offset part of what we're fixing to give Watch by cutting some off of Literacy Connection.
Is that in the form of a motion?
Well, you've got a motion on the
Okay,
floor,
I'm
but I'm just stating, I mean, if we're gonna be fair or change our stand on what we're gonna do for Watch, I don't see any reason why we can't change it on Literacy Connection. That's just my opinion.
Is this a time for comments, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
You know-
You've got the right to say what you want to, Mr.
No,
Mayor.
I just want to make sure I was in order as far as the motion is all concerned. I sort of disagree from the standpoint that if Watch was not going to be funded at all. So what are we looking at? Are we trying to rob Peter to pay Paul? In other words, why we are a part of a community. We should be a part of the healthcare, the overall healthcare of our citizens, and we should also be part of the literacy training for our citizens. These are the ones we've been talking about today are probably one of the top important nonprofits that we're dealing with. For example, should we not make a motion to cut the Arts Council budget down to zero? Which is more important?
I don't have a problem with that one either.
Which is more important? The health care of our citizens and whether they can speak English or not? Or what I'm saying is that are we gonna back up and say, hey, let's don't fund any of them? I thought it was a great compromise because the phone calls that I've gotten, especially from Watch, have been totally different the last 2 or 3 days. They realize that we are the funding arm. And of course, a lot of this has been, this bad communications, if you will, has been forced by comments that have been taken the wrong way and printed the wrong way. All these things. So what's happened is that we just reached a point where the lines of communications, as far as Watch is concerned, were closed because it came out to be a contest as to who was going to do what. So I think everybody, the county comes out a win-win, and these nonprofits come out a win-win in this case. So I support the motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Bell.
since you did not make a motion, can we just, I'm just asking the question, can we just go ahead and leave it like Mr.
So you're
Dodd
calling
is?
the question on my motion?
That's fine. But I've expressed my opinion.
That's good.
Is any other discussion? No other discussion, all in favor of Mr. Doherty's motion, share sign of right hand. Motion
John, did
carries.
you vote for that motion?
Yeah.
Okay.
Motion carries unanimous. Next item.
While you're speaking about Literacy Connections, could I ask Ms. Holt or Ms. Rice, either one, to give me some history on the funding of that program?
1213, 75,964. I mean, 1213. 75,964, 1314, 85,000, 1415, 101, 232. Recommended for 1516, 101, 232.
And your first was
75, 75,964 in 1213.
1213.
And that's what we have with us right here.
Do you have what it was the year before?
Get on the computer.
Do you mind if we go back a little bit?
I would hope so.
Yeah, that's what we're here for.
Hang on just 1 second, please.
Let's don't forget our in-kind contributions too.
Is that in there?
$35,523.
I knew there was a $35,000 figure in there.
1112, 56,050, and that's as far back as we go.
And we don't give Watch any in-kind contributions.
So it's almost doubled in those 5 fiscal years.
It has.
Just comment.
Pay.
In my old job, so I gave them free space in my office. So they started out very small with money from partnership with children. And they weren't on the county payroll. And about time, and I was on their board, and about the time that I did retire, all of a sudden, they disappeared, and next thing you know, they're county employees. But I told them after that, after being on the board, during the time that I was not in office and shortly after, that I did not think in the long term that they would continue to receive county dollars. I told them this as a board member, you need to move forward, complete your nonprofit status. I'm not sure they've done that. And begin to seek other funding. And they've been trying to find some other funding. But we need, just like I said a while ago with Watch, I think we need to let them know that there's not a never-ending pot of money that we're going to continue to fund.
Yes, question I have.
I want, the services to continue somehow, but
With
I don't know that we need to pay for it all.
with a investment of almost doubled in 5 years, what has the return been on that investment?
Well, would you repeat that, Mr. Verlander?
Well, in 5 fiscal years, the investment is almost doubled. So what has been the return on that investment?
I think the answer to that question would lay somewhere in the profitability of the employers who's using a lot of these folk that's being helped by literacy. And that's the only question I walked around and asked Ms. Yates was, what contribution have some of the employers made? And I got the impression there was some, but not a lot, in some instances, none. and I don't know exactly how this reeks of control over what you can do with businesses, but I think there should be some sort of a stipulation put in, and I guess it's have to go all the way to the federal level, but I don't know where, that whenever give folk visas, work permits to come into the United States, there should be something put in place to aid these people with learning the language and being able to survive. Because those are survival skills that's coming through literacy. This whole business of being able to read, write, and communicate with folk, I mean, that's what they're doing. And don't want to make this too personal, but I work with the Haitian population quite a bit. And I can tell you that they need a lot of help in communication skills and simply survival skills out there dealing with Duke Energy and water companies and so forth. So that's a good question. You know, what are the return on the dollars? But that lay somewhere in the profit side of the companies who are using them. Everyone, I mean, who's using that labor.
I think from the public school side, they emphasize third grade as your critical year. And if we're gonna emphasize reading, writing, arithmetic, we need to start there as well.
Well, that's my thoughts is, I'm certainly not denying what Mr. Kamar is saying about the Haitians or any other nationality. But we're obligated to educate those third graders. We're mandated by state law to educate them. And this, we're not. And I'm not saying they don't need the help. I don't want to be cold-hearted, but it's got to stop somewhere. And I just, I got a problem with it doubling in 5 years.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Mayor.
There's also some, and I don't know the exact number, but I know there are some that have entered the literacy program over the years that were from the public school system because the school system was not doing their job.
I can't argue that.
Okay, so what I'm saying is that when a government entity doesn't pick it up and somebody else does that make it wrong for somebody to do that? I'm just asking a question because maybe a lot of these are patches because of the failure of local government to do what they should be doing.
Okay, I mean, basically what I'm hearing is that we want to, what I'm hearing from some of the board is that we want to continue to fund Literacy Connection the same as what's in the budget.
No, I don't think that's what we're hearing.
Well, I guess I heard something mentioned a while ago. Is Literacy Connection considered a county department, such as the finance department?
No, they're not. It's a 501c3 nonprofit. Prior to my getting here, apparently, and Pam can help me with this, but apparently you went through a year where their medical insurance went up quite a bit. They didn't have time to rebid it. And so what your previous manager came up with was a proposal to pick them up as employees, because they'd have to be employees to be on the retirement system and also on the hospitalization plan. And then you, quote, rented them back to the organization. So in essence, we're reimbursed by Literacy Council for those employees. But it is not a department of the county.
Okay. All right, on the in-kind contribution, and I was wrong on the figure. This budget, physical budget we're in now was 35,523. They're estimated for this coming budget is 34,203. But what's the difference in giving them free rent than giving East Point free rent? We were giving East Point free rent and we started charging them. I mean, I'm just missing something.
Well, could I say something?
Yes, sir.
I'm not gonna go there because East Point, as everybody knows, is worth it's got millions and millions of dollars, so.
No,
That's got
that's
nothing
not
to do
true.
with
Yeah, it does, because this is a county thing here
No,
that we're looking at.
Mr. Mayor, that is not true.
Well-
We have a savings that the state forces us to have, at a certain rate.
Yeah.
And we don't have millions and millions and millions of dollars just to, spend.
Okay, but what my point is this, is that what is the average that we have cut the other nonprofits?
A certain amount of money, and we don't have.
What's your, on your recommendation?
My recommendation, the only one I cut was watch.
Okay, so
The
all
other,
the other.
basically, I froze everything at the level it was.
Okay, all right.
Now,
So
you had some people ask for more, like literacy asked for about 7,000 more.
Yeah.
But I funded them at the level they were funded in the current year.
Okay, so if that's the trend of what we are doing with the other nonprofits, is it unreasonable to ask us to stay consistent on what we're looking at?
Well, Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Doherty.
I see your point, but I don't want to cut them by 50%. I'm going to make a motion so that we can get beyond this, and we can have a vote on it and decide where we're going to be. And that motion is that we roll back the contribution on Literacy Connections to the 2014 level of $85,000. That is a minor cut, $16,232 is all it is, but at least it's beginning and going in a different direction. So my motion is to roll that back to a contribution of $85,000.
All right, I have a motion on the floor. Any other discussion?
Question.
Yes.
Mr. Page.
Do you know, George, whether or not that impacts the, because they've got those AmeriCorps grants, does that make them lose them or?
I don't know what the impact would be there. They have to, I think they have to have some match on that, but their total budget, she says in here that the total budget is $228,900. So if you cut them back 16, that would be down to $212,000. So I would think they would still be able to pay that.
It's really not a substantial cut.
Right.
Well, let me ask this body to do this. We have made some real good choices, and let's not, and I won't use the word negatively when we say a knee-jerk reaction to just a cut, because otherwise we would be looking at, did we want to cut some off for everybody? Let's just wait. Let's not rush to judgment here. Let's make sure that any cut does not harm someone by giving them a cut. Not giving them a raise is one thing, but not giving them a cut is another. Let's just give it a little bit of time to settle in, and let's not cut anyone. Let's not vote to cut anyone else today.
Mr. Chairman, I'll remove my motion.
Thank you, sir.
I would like to have that information,
On,
whether it impacts this AmeriCorps slots or not.
That's good.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I might inquire also, if you would ask them how they intend to make up the difference in regards to fundraising in some other way. In other words, we only talk about $16,000. They survived 4 years ago with zero from the county, zero. So this was not a major cut. This was a reasonable way of asking them basically to go out and raise private funds in the amount of $16,232 to supplement their budget. We would contribute 85. How they came up with the difference or balance their budget. So it was I felt like a reasonable way of handling this. But if you all don't want to
I
proceed,
said let's not do it today.
I understand.
Let's give them a little bit of time to work, make sure that we don't harm them.
But be
I didn't
careful
say-
what you ask for, because next time around the cut may be deeper.
Well, we'll have to deal with that then. Well, I mean,
and
let's just deal with
This,
it then.
I thought, was a fair compromise.
I do need to tell y'all that there was the original budget on that year was $85,000. There was an amendment to that budget that brought it up another $15,000, which brought it to $100,500 by the end of the year. So originally that year was $85,000, and it was brought up and ended the year at $100,500. So your history would have been 12-13, 75, 974, 13-14, 100, 500, $1,415,101,232, and at this point, what is recommended next year is $101,232.
Let me hear that 14 again, 10 what?
101,232, 1415, that is our current year,
I'm sorry, the preceding year.
100,500.
That's the one that was amended.
That was amended, and that may have, it seems like it did have to do with the AmeriCorps grant.
It did.
They did, because I remember.
I do too.
Then 11-12, we started at 66,000.
I mean, that, and let me say this, because this whole thing started when the explosion was that they came to us and asked for this additional dollars. We went above 100,000. We're at 100,000 now. So now the new plateau is 100. I'm just trying to get them back kind of where they were at $85,000.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Mr. Kirk.
maybe Mr. Cromartie or Mr. Pay can help me out here, or Mr. Woods, whomever. I've got a learning curve here with Literacy Connections. Please bear with me. I'm trying not to make no hasty decision, I'm just trying to learn. What part of this does it or does it not work with the GED program or with adult education at Wayne Community College? Is it an arm of it? Is it not an arm of it? Are we missing a link there that we went a little overboard maybe or not? I'm just asking for a curious answer here.
That's a good question.
You want to go first?
Go ahead, you, go ahead.
I've always felt it's been a conflict because they do the same thing at the community college. They also do outreach. But I will say this, somehow this is reaching more people than perhaps community college is reaching, and I can't answer why. And the person who does that at the community college is on the board, or she was. And they got two community college people that sit on the watch board. I mean, excuse me.
Literacy.
I don't know, it seems like
Freudian
sometimes
slip there.
we take an
On-
easy
on
way
the
out.
literacy board.
Can I have a question?
Yes, sir.
The community college, are those volunteers that do that?
No, I'm saying they have board members from the community
I
college.
know, but is a community college, do they have volunteers that help?
Not that I'm aware of.
Well, that's the difference right there. The literacy here in this area has a tremendous.
No, they don't use a mentor program. That's what you're talking about.
Exactly.
They use staff.
There is a tremendous amount of participation in literacy in the city of Goldsboro in particular. So that's the reason why. So, you know.
But they are reaching a different.
The best I can remember, we may not have been in word for word, but we had this same discussion last year.
Yeah, we did.
And we're gonna have the same discussion next year. I'm sticking with my gun. I think they need to be cut, but, I'm not gonna make a motion of it.
All right, Mr. Chairman, but some of the thoughts that have been brought up today are valid points. This county, the taxpayer is in fact funding Wayne Community College. And we are offering at Wayne Community College programs for adult literacy. So there is the function of the county in paying those dollars. Now, beyond that, there was a creation of Literacy Connections as a 501(c) that they in fact were going to also have community outreach and volunteers to provide similar services. Somehow or another, the line has gotten blurred here, that now we are in fact putting dollars into the 501(c) rather than trying to expand what we're already funding at the community college.
Thank you, sir.
So there's where the rub is, because we're funding them both now. We're funding 50% of Literacy Connections, according to the numbers.
Well, don't forget we're funding the schools too now.
Well, I agree, but I'm just saying if they're not going to school, if they're adults and they're not going to school, you're already funding one program. How many programs are we going to fund? So at any rate, and I understand the volunteers and I understand that they're passionate about it. I do understand that. And there's where the rub comes between the private sector and the public sector of funding. But that said, I think we're going to put this matter off for another discussion another day.
Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Yes, sir, Mr.
To answer Bill's question, if you go to the budget under Literacy Council, it has $10,000 for the match for the AmeriCorps bill, and all of that is from the city of Goldsboro.
When the city of Goldsboro cut them.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, if you look at the budget, it's about probably halfway through their presentation here.
So Chuck Allen's really doing a better job than what.
Well, wait a minute now, I didn't realize that the city of Goldsboro has not fully funded their request. How much did they fund?
They cut it by 50%, I think.
They're showing $10,000 here from the city of Goldsboro is her request.
And the city funded 5,000.
I don't know. I don't know what the city did, but I was answering Bill's question about.
Steve, did you write the article in the paper?
He ain't getting into this fight.
I was answering Bill's
Good
question
answer.
is, you were asking me what the impact on AmeriCorps was. It's $10,000, and she's asking Goldsboro to pick up the $10,000. I'm not seeing anything else earmarked as a match for AmeriCorps.
Well, if the city cut it by 50%, I'd hate for us to come back in 2 weeks and want to cut it 50%. You sure you don't want me to reintroduce my motion?
Well, you also gotta remember, the reasons behind the city possibly doing that.
Ms. Pam's got the answer
Think
right
about it
now.
for a minute.
Just a second.
What do you think they could do? Jesus, I don't know that. That's fine.
I don't need too much information for Joe. About to start the war over.
And while she's reading that, for our assistant county manager, if you'll turn to our book here on the sewer fund, it states in there that, that the original fees were $3.39 per gallon. The monthly usage fee was changed to the prevailing outside of the city customer rate. Currently, the rate is $4.12, and that's where I came up with that 22% increase. I knew I read it.
Oh, well, now, wait a minute.
Okay.
Let me explain that.
All right.
That's two different things, okay? Because I'm the one who wrote that. What?
Well, I read it that it went from $3.39 to $4.12.
No, I know, but that's not it, okay? You entered into an agreement, let me get to this thing.
I read too much, huh?
No, I may not have written it very well. Let's see. Okay, what you've got is you had an agreement. The county, in the third paragraph there, it says the county entered into a 20-year contract in March 2000 with the city, guaranteeing up to 400,000 gallons per day of treatment capacity in Goldsboro's wastewater treatment plant. The county agreed to pay the city's prevailing rate for an outside the city user who has not purchased reserve capacity. What you came back in July in 2002 and did is you purchased reserve capacity. So in an amendment to the agreement in July 2002, and a rate change after construction of the wastewater treatment plant, the county paid $847,500 for 250,000 gallons per day of wastewater treatment capacity based upon a $3.39 per gallon fee. That is not an ongoing charge, the monthly charge. If you divide 250,000 into 847,500, that's $3.39 per gallon. That was a capacity charge for going towards the construction cost.
Okay.
And that's a one-time fee. Does everybody see that? So that's not the fee. Now, what they did then is, as part of that, the monthly usage rate was changed to the prevailing outside the city customer that has purchased reserve capacity. So you fell into a different category.
Okay.
We did get a lower rate from that point going forward. And what was happening is, at that time, the city could not provide you with capacity until they built an expansion. So all of this was prospective. They went out and built it, and when the construction costs came in lower, they adjusted that fee. And that's what that was about. So I think what we'll need to do is just, what I'd suggest is just go back 10 years, and let's see what Goldsboro's fee was. But the fees changed in 2002, so that's 13 years ago. What I would suggest is that we go back 10 years, find out what we were paying per, and what they did, remember, was that's $4.12 per 100 cubic feet, not per gallon. And I convert that for you. The current charge at $4.12 per 100 cubic feet equates to $5.49 per 1,000 gallons. So I would propose we go back, ask them in public records to get their fees for an outside city customer that has this reserve capacity. Then we'll be able to chart the history of what were those rates, what have they taken them up to, and that'll give us the rate history you're talking about, Joe.
Third year, third budget, and I brought this up 3 times. There is not enough revenue from what we're charging the users of that system to sustain this sewer system. For infrastructure improvements and repairs, it's just not enough.
Yeah.
So we, again, 3 years ago, I wanted a rate analysis. We're going to have to do it. We need to do it, and I'd like to do it this year.
Well, between now and when you vote on the 16th, we can get, I'm confident we can get
Thank
that
you.
information.
Thank you.
So you want to go back 10 years?
Mr. Chairman, I'm
Make
through with
sure
my
you get-
questions.
They're gonna give it to you in 100 feet.
I'm sorry, but you have to go through this process.
You have more.
If you got an answer for us, Ms. Hope?
I don't, it was, I didn't see it in the paper.
I do. Goldsboro gave Literacy Connections $12,000.
Gave them how much?
$12,000.
And what did they request?
26.5.
Ooh,
How much did they actually,
I'm telling you.
How about the year
You want me to
previous?
reintroduce my motion?
What was the
how
cut?
about the year previous?
I can't tell you that.
I mean, you asked for what they asked for. What did they actually give them the year before?
Oh, I don't
Can't tell you that.
Okay, I'd like to know what, maybe they jacked up what they're asking for, and the city just funded it.
And that was what they, the amount at the public hearing, and I don't think they cut it anymore.
Anyone else have anything?
Just a quick comment. And yes, John and Ed, I wanted to publicly voice my appreciation to George Wood and Pam Hope for meeting with me yesterday so that I wouldn't keep you at 7 o'clock tonight, because we spent about, 3 hours on this yesterday or more. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And I want to make sure, I encourage you all, as you're going through that budget, to ask the county manager and ask Pam, for any questions that you have, because they're here to answer your questions.
Well, Mr. Daugherty, probably the difference is that we tend to want to wait till the meeting itself to ask the questions and hear the answers. Otherwise, we do it on an individual basis, and there's going to be information that the manager makes sure, because it's just not going to be the same question answered the same option. I know you have your right to do that, but if we all did that, that would multiply 3 times. That'd be 21 hours they'd have to spend doing it differently. And I'm not saying that you don't have a right to do that, but we can, it will become obvious that you'd had previous discussions and maybe come up with advanced answers or positions. So since we're editorializing, let's be fair about this.
Yeah,
Body cam.
and if I could comment on that, and that is, I appreciate it from the standpoint that because it does not show a lack of intelligence of understanding a budget, so they can walk me through it. Thank you.
Well, and let's clarify something. All 7 of us had the same opportunity to go to Mr. Wood and ask him any questions we wanted to.
Matter of fact, the ones that If there was something really big, he wanted to hear about it first anyway, didn't he?
I mean, we
Something
all,
that was really
you know,
controversial, we kinda want to hear about it.
we're all,
I just kinda-
all seven of us is equal in what we can go to
That's
the
true.
judge and talk to them about.
Wayne's right, I made that offer to all of
You
you.
did.
I'm used to doing that, because I want everybody to have their questions answered. So,
Does that include an hour and a half? Okay, no, I'm just kidding.
I spent too much time putting the insulation in it. Look at this, and just,
But let me say this, thank you for a well-developed budget and a line item type budget I'm accustomed to reading. So I'm just accustomed to looking at this kind of thing, and I can tell if it's been increased or decreased in projections, and, so that, I'm comfortable with what you've written.
And on a different note, we gave a shout out to Chuck Allen, but I've had the opportunity to sit between the two Democrat folks down here, and I have learned so much in the last 2 years. And we actually cooperate and believe in the same thing sometimes.
And thank you, Mr. Woods, for giving us a balanced budget.
thank you.
You understand, it's gotta be balanced.
But you see, let me just throw a little something. John said, congratulations on a balanced budget, but a way a budget can be balanced is to take some from Peter and give it to Paul. And if you're dealing with $1 million, if you come out with $1 million, you still, but Peter might have suffered, just like Paul, so let's not be too quick to say a balanced budget.
But I think where y'all missing it at is that the budget is not ours until the county manager presents it to us. It's his budget until he presents it to the county commissioners.
Right.
And if it's balanced,
You're okay.
that's what we asked him to do. We asked him to balance the budget.
One thing, Mr. Chairman, that I had talked to Mr. Wood about, as we're going along with this fleet management program in the upcoming fiscal year, I've asked him to consider developing a classification plan for various job titles that goes along with a vehicle. For an example, some people in the sheriff's department may need a SUV or ES QRV, but some of them may need just a small standardized sedan. So we've asked that to kind of have a standard there, so from year to year, we won't be seeing an $18,000 truck in one department come to us and a $30,000 truck in another department come to us. So
And let me comment on that. Joe's exactly right. This year, for the first time, we took the fixed assets. We had Steve Cross develop a spreadsheet for us. We took off the fixed assets, every single vehicle. And we have them by department, by division. And then we're able to look at the mileage on them, the age of them, that sort of thing, and what the estimated usage and mileage is each year. Come up with, over a 10-year period, a 10-year replacement plan on all those. And then, as Joe said, the additional step in there is they may have a larger vehicle, and as we look to replace those as they come up, we'll make the decision about, can we go smaller on that, whether it's a truck, vehicle, of a car, whatever. But the starting point, we now have the starting point on that. And that's where we developed, the 16 budget is based on this replacement schedule in the CIP, as well as the other 4 years. But Joe's point's well made. Wherever we can reduce those sizes, we need to do that.
Could I comment on that? Because that's a big thing.
It is.
I mean, it's a big thing, because this county has never had a thorough evaluation of the capital needs by department, so that people had a schedule whereby you replace what you acquire. It was always kind of left up to department heads to make a request for a vehicle, and then you got into a discussions and negotiations and whether or not you got the vehicle or whether or not it lasted another year. And over the years, that's created a real problem, because we've got some real old vehicles. We have some ambulances. Joe, how old are some of these ambulances?
we got some in the neighborhood of 17 years old.
17 years old. So what Mr. Wood has been able to do here is to go through and outline where the needs are. And by the way, it's front end. There's a lot of costs this year that we've got to go out and catch up. And rather than going out and exploding our budget and raising our taxes, he has gone in and he's found a way to finance that huge capital improvement this year so that it stretches it out over several years. I mean, it's a big thing. It really is, and I applaud you for it.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah,
Chairman, I'd like to give a shout out to our IT
Department. I think we have one of the finest, smartest IT department I've ever seen.
They're so smart, I can't understand what they're saying.
Well, I like to say something about that also. They made a good point, and you had to connect the dots when you're listening to IT. Because we face this in the school system. The hardware will still be working right, but they would change the software, or they'd write a new program. And all of a sudden, that 286 computer was no longer, you had to go to 486. And then, you got to go change all the hardware. And then that means you got to buy new software. And then you got to buy the support for it and the maintenance agreement for it. So it keeps clicking up. And Joe, just to go back a minute, and I won't gonna do this, but I just can't help it. You take the library, for instance, about the piece of audio equipment that was no longer, that was decided to let them use it another year. If you got audio equipment that's interfacing with different ages, if it's a 2003, and it's trying to interface with some 2015, I'm just being general about it. That stuff is not gonna be interfacing the same. It's just not gonna do it. And so I just want to toss that in, because we're talking about IT. You gotta connect the dots on what all this stuff is saying.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just logistically, I'd like to ask, y'all have asked us to look up, I think, about 4 or 5 things, if I remember right. One of them being the sewer rates and everything. Do you want to have a short work session, one more work session before you come in here Tuesday, 2 weeks from now to vote, to go through those things, or do you just want us to give you that information as we get it ready?
We should be able to move on that pretty rapidly in
Okay.
the regular meeting. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I don't see a need for another work session, do y'all?
Not one of those.
If you think it's something we need to know, email us.
Well, that's what I was
And
gonna
do
do.
that.
When we get all this information, I'll just shoot you an email, but I want to make sure everybody's okay with that, or do you want one more work session?
Are you asking us to come back and give you another
No,
4
I'm-
hours of drilling?
no, I'm asking if you want to do it.
I understand.
I wasn't volunteering.
Just make sure,
Just send it to Joe, we'll.
just make sure that list that you've got from us requesting, make sure that, I want to know what the figures is that the city paid Literacy Connection for the last 3 years.
Okay.
It's
did you
public
get that,
record,
Pam?
I mean.
Pam, did you get that? Okay, you'll have that.
Mr. Mayor.
Does anybody have any other issues with any of the nonprofits? Because we could get into another work session if we don't have one. That's what I'm saying. I don't have any issues with, but the key is that, are we willing to accept what you proposed as far as the other nonprofits are concerned? Does anyone have any comments on that?
Well, I mean, you're gonna ask my opinion. Yes, I do have some heartburn on it, but I'm willing. Look, I'm picking my battles. I'm gonna leave it alone. The only one I wanna address is Literacy Connections, and we're gonna address that at the next meeting. I mean, that's as far as I'm concerned. Joe, are you okay with that?
You eat an elephant one bite at a time.
That's true.
Anybody got any other questions on it then, or comments on the budget or anything?
What are y'all gonna do if I come up with a nonprofit that we're not funding and ask you to fund it?
Well, look at it. We said that from the start.
Don't do that.
I'm not.
Thank
I'm
you.
just asking.
I mean, you got every right to bring it up.
Well, that's right, you got a right to bring it up.
We gotta look at all of it.
And,
I think this is gonna be a declining.
well, yeah, but that's a
We
good
haven't,
point. What
we
if you
haven't
did?
spent much time on the nonprofits, but you have a whole book here that has their, what they requested, so feel free to at least read their cover letter, and so you know something
You
about it.
must have to do a budget amendment though to get us hand carts, get all these books up and down the elevator.
I'm leaving mine here.
You look for-
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion on the floor, we adjourn. Any other
Just a reminder,
discussion?
stop by and see Cindy, she has something for everyone.
All in favor say, show your right hand, right? Yay, nay, whatever.
You okay with that?
It'll be, they'll do the evaluations July and August, and it'll go into paychecks in September.
Okay. So it
Now,
will
the
be-
$500 bonus just simply stays.
Right.
There's nothing to add or delete there, it's just.
So what we've done is we've done a combination to try to keep everybody above inflation.
That's right.
And then you reward those who have done outstanding work.
Right. I want to be clear about that. That 500 is not an additional 500, it's just a continuation of the 500 you gave last year.
Right, I understand.
Okay.
Okay, that's all I have for the moment, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Doty.
could I get Mr. Burns to get me some information on the sewer system rates? And we can go back to find out when the last rate increase that we had. And if I'm understanding those rates, we've got one rates for within and one that's without, or outside or something. There's two different rates, is that correct?
I'll need to check that, but we'll check that.
But let's find out when the last time we had a rate increase. I see in here somewhere where the city increased their rates. And I just want to make sure that we are stair-stepping our rate up to keep up with what the
Right.
city's doing.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Now, any questions y'all have for Mr. Wood?
Let me get to my tabs.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Mayor.
I guess while we're waiting, I might as well be the person that steps up on this one. I wanted to look at the proposed literacy connections. I want to make a motion that we do not enter a contract, require a contract with Literacy Connections for people to be citizens of the United States for this reason. The E-Verify, for example, which we try to use in our business, it's only as good as information that's provided. You are not 100% sure that the information is correct. So even with all that, you still could have people here that are illegal but still have driver's license, IDs, because they're a dime a dozen on the street. And it's, you've already said that out of 161, there was 4 that were questionable. Under those circumstances, I don't really see why we should have anything. Let them do their job. We're funding them. Let them do their job and don't inhibit them. And I agree with Commissioner Bell. So I want to make a motion that we do not require an agreement between the county and Literacy Connection.
We're in a work session. I mean, Mr. Mayo, I question why you bringing it up now and didn't bring it up in the regular meeting.
Because I was told by Mr. Parker that during the public hearing, I could not bring up a motion during the public hearing.
But you could after the public hearing was closed.
That's right. That's what we're doing now. We're going over the budget. Isn't this what this is for? Isn't it, Mr. County Manager?
Yeah, this is to go over the budget.
Okay.
Yeah, and then, so.
I
What
waited.
what y'all gotta do now
Yeah.
is discuss these various points and decide what you wanna do.
That's right.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Doherty.
in regards to his motion, I believe we stated that all nonprofits, we would ask that a contract be signed by all nonprofits to
Well,
receive funding. Am I correct?
No, what we said was, there was a question on there is, would you be willing to enter into a contract? with
Okay,
it? We
okay.
don't have them with everybody. The question here is that, and I want to clarify something that's been said, is the recommendation was to provide services only to U.S. citizens and those residing in this country legally. So you don't have to be a citizen to qualify for this. And my understanding in listening to the comments were, this new policy would have only affected 4 people. Because what we're saying is they either were US citizens, verified with a social security card, or they were verified a different way using E-Verify through the employer, and there were only 4 that were not able to be checked out, or were not able to prove that they were here legally.
They did not
That's,
provide.
isn't that what you said?
They did not provide.
So we affected 4 people out of 161.
So the question is why do we need it? Just like, for example, in my company, doing military work, being less than 50 employees, I have to get a driver's license, social security, some kind of ID, and make photocopies and put it into personnel folders. The only way that you cannot be 100% sure that the information that's given to you is legal. There's no way you can be sure of that. There's not a company in America that knows every one of their employees for sure that they are here legally in some way, shape, or form. So why do we have it?
Well, it really comes down to a philosophical issue. I mean, whether or not you want taxpayers to provide a service to people who are not in the country legally. That's really all it comes down to.
The question is, and she had already caught the 4, but my question is, do we have anything in writing? Do we have any documentation that if she hadn't have caught them 4 to protect us, to protect the county, and to tax,
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I might, and we were discussing that earlier. There is a chart here where the citizenship status is listed, and it indicates those as U.S. citizens, and then from there, it goes to a permanent resident. Now, again, it gets down to, we're not talking about whether or not they are residents, where they're living here, whether or not, we're talking about whether or not they in fact are legally documented to be in the United States. That's what we're speaking of here. Instead, what we've got on here is permanent resident, and that could be a number of people. In other words, I could be from Mexico, I could come to Wayne County and be a permanent resident, but not necessarily be here legally. So my question is, and if these people are unemployed, undoubtedly you didn't use E-Verify at an employment to verify their legal status because they're unemployed. So, unfortunately, here is where there is a conflict. The conflict is this. You are a nonprofit organization that have your own bylaws and mission statement. But you're asking the taxpayer to contribute a large amount, not only in dollars, but also in-kind contribution. If you add up the in-kind contribution with the dollar funding, we're approaching, I believe, around $160,000. $135,000. Well, I would think it would be more than that, in that we are providing, I think we had a list of in-kind that was in the $50,000 range for rent and electricity and so forth. But needless to say, we won't get into that. The point is that we are providing around $135,000, which is almost half of your budget. Am I correct?
40-something%.
Almost 50% of the budget. From my standpoint, my constituents are asking me to verify, if you use my tax dollars, I'm asking you to spend it on Wayne County residents, not on residents of Argentina or Mexico or wherever. And that's all we were asking here. And that is, if we're going to fund 50% of a nonprofit, it would be nice to know that, in fact, this is going to Wayne County residents, not residents of other countries. So we would appreciate it if we would get, in fact, some method that you could verify their legal status of being in the United States. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Mayor.
In order to be a resident of Wayne County, you have to reside in this county for a year? What's the statute?
Voting is, 30 to 60 days, I believe. 30 days?
Yeah.
That makes you a legal resident, right?
Well, I hope they're not voting.
Residence is also in your
Yeah,
mind.
they're voting. Yeah.
Residence is in your mind.
I guess the question
The
I
what?
have
In
is,
your mind,
where do you think you live?
Oh, okay.
People can have two different places, and so the question is, which one do you consider
You could
home?
live in North Carolina or New Jersey.
It doesn't,
Oh, my goodness.
but my only point is that it doesn't line up with everything else that's going on in the county. How come we don't, we are responsible for funding schools, for example. Why don't we send them a contract and say,
Because
we're not
that's,
gonna,
because the state mandates that.
I know, but we are doing the funding.
But the state mandates you do the funding. And
Okay,
the state
but-
mandates you do it under their rules.
It's still taxpayer money. Well, either way you shake it. What I'm asking is, we be consistent with what's going on in our state, on the
Well,
county
I
level
personally
and the
think the
state level.
state's inconsistent.
Well, it might be, but it's not our
Well,
job
I'm-
to try to change it, because we can't change it
We
unless we
can't change it at the state, but you can change it at the local level.
Okay, well, the
With
key is
local-
that verification. I know for a fact in my own company, can anybody give me any indication that E-Verify is 100% correct? That is not true.
There,
And if you are audited, if we go into this agreement and you are audited, even though you don't have any responsibility except what they give you, and you've been on everything that you can go on to document, then you're gonna run the risk of being defunded if you don't abide by it. How are you gonna do it if it's impossible to do? And that's what businesses are doing across this nation, because we have the same problem.
Well, I think our intent was that to use E-Verify. So if you write the contract that way, in other words, you say what's an acceptable form of identification. It would be a social security card, coupled with a driver's license, so you can verify that that's the social security card of that person. You can check that with Social Security Administration. You can use E-Verify if they're employed. The question I have is, you've used a classification called permanent resident.
Yes.
What is your definition of that?
I do not give permanent resident status. Each of the students that present themselves present us with a social security card, a permanent resident card, which is issued to them by the State Department or Immigration Citizenship Services. That's called the A number. That number links them to employment and to being in the country.
So a work permit.
So it gives them the rights of a permanent resident, which is a legal classification. And I'm sure someone with more legal authority might express that. They are legally, we are each of us in this room legally classified as U.S. citizens. We may be a permanent resident. Permanent resident has permission to live in the United States for 10 years and to seek employment.
But we don't have an issue with anybody like that.
we don't have issues
Everybody
with
The
it.
policy
on that list
says,
had either social security number or a permanent resident.
well, the policy says, what I recommended was either a citizen or is in the country legally. If you've been granted a permanent residency, which is work permit and visa and all that, you comply with the policy.
Well, that's what I was.
So what I understood you to say is, what we're requiring would have affected 4 people.
Right,
Yes.
that's all.
And unfortunately, it could lose us our other sources of funding.
I don't understand that. Why would other people say you're required to provide services to people who aren't supposed to be here?
Well, when you mentioned to me that we might be required to E-Verify, I want to find out what that would mean. So I contacted all of our providers, our funders. And as I shared with you, the AmeriCorps, which provides us with over $90,000 worth of employment, and the 3 employees said that they would consider that, and this is just their initial reaction, an illegal action on our part, which would be discriminatory towards,
How can you discriminate
I'm
against
not
somebody who's
saying-
not supposed to be here?
All I'm saying is they have a non-discrimination policy, and if we fail to provide services, now this was their reaction now. I have not asked them to seek a statement from their attorney, which is embedded, as I said, with the University of North Carolina Chapel Hill. But I will say that I also asked United Way, Steve Park, and he presented me with his anti-discrimination statement, and he said that he would have to ask his board and his attorney to give us.
But you don't have any decision from them.
I talked to the attorney for my board, and he said that we could not, the only way to test this would be to deny someone services because we couldn't confirm their status, and then to see if the lawsuit would sue. And as I've talked with other agencies and department heads, I talked with 38 literacy councils in North Carolina. No one else e-verifies their students. Community college does not e-verify their students. None of the other county departments e-verifies for general services, the issue of a book at the library or to get a bus pass. No, none of the others do. And so what my board suggested was the option there, which was for us to generate the same report that you have in your hands to let you know that we're tracking this for all of our students. Any new student that arrives, we would ask for confirmation through Social Security card or permanent resident card that they are here legally. And if they're not, then we would put them in a different category of services and not give them access to county resources because we understand that's an issue. That would not affect our funders.
Okay, thank you. We're playing both ends against the middle. We keep hearing from other agencies. That's not the issue here. The issue is your agency. You know, we can't compare your agency to other agencies. We're concentrating on this one. Other agencies, if they've got something in place, we need to have something in place. That's
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Mayor.
I will amend my motion to include what Literacy Connection has proposed to us in her proposal this morning. I would amend my motion to include that as proposed by the Literacy Connection Board. And somebody can read that if they like. You want me to read it? Okay. I will amend my motion to accept what they have presented to us.
Mr. Chairman.
I have a motion on the floor. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman. Tim has some questions, you know, I think it satisfies whether they're legally here or not. There are problems with documents. I mean, over the years, I've seen thousands of IDs, thousands of Social Security cards, and many times some good, some bad, you know. And, you know, as the years went by, they got a lot better. You could buy, you know, when I left at $60, you could buy a whole set of documents. But, you know, sometimes you have to take it, you know, face value whether it's legal or not. You know. But anyway, I want to be sure that we are maintaining copies of those documents that's proving that these people are legal. And if they defrauded us, that's another thing. And, you know, if they're here, you know, Wayne County, highly agricultural, so we have a huge H-2A people here, and they can bring their families on a H-4 visa. I know it's dangerous talking about this. And the same goes with H-2B, which is in our manufacturing, food manufacturing primarily in this county. And those people are legally here. Now, if that meets the definition of what you guys are trying to say, I'm not so sure I want to see permanent. I want to make sure they're legally here. You know, I'm not for those people who are not supposed to be here, and I can't spend county dollars on that. But those who are legally here, I can make that happen because they're not going away. And you know, we owe it also not only to our farming community but our manufacturing community to try to help them get a product out. Without them here, it ain't gonna happen because Americans will no longer do those jobs. That's a fact. So we gotta recognize that.
Okay, do we want to vote on this motion now, or do we want to have lunch and come back? I mean, what's the pleasure of the board?
We're done.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think probably we need to have a few minutes to
Digest it.
digest this, because right this minute, are we, at this moment, we're concerned about 4 people. We're concerned about 4 people. And the philosophy, I know we're concerned about the philosophy of this, but we're concerned right now about 4 people that you can't determine whether they meet that suggested, policy or not. And so, if we were trying to vote this minute, if we voted to accept the policy that Mr. Wood has put together, a suggestion, whatever, does that put your, are you saying that put your agency in a dangerous position?
If you require us to e-verify, I have each and every student that registers, and we cannot selectively e-verify. Either we e-verify everyone who comes, or we don't e-verify anybody, because that would definitely be discrimination.
Well, you don't have to e-verify somebody who walks in with a valid social security card.
Well, that's what I'm saying, that we get valid verification. And the other thing is, we are highly vetted agency. Our records are open. I gave you this report that has our student ID numbers and not their names. But any funder of Literacy Connection, any community member of Literacy Connection can walk through the door and say, I want to audit your records. Because they are stakeholders in our success. And so United Way, Dollar General Grant, City of Goldsboro, County of Wayne,
So
they audit our records at any time.
If they audited your records and they saw that you had e-verified 4 people and they wound up not meeting the criteria to get your services, then that would be putting you in a bad position.
Well,
Mr. Wood,
can I read this?
yeah, and then I got a question for you.
Okay, this is the United Way of Wayne County Statement of Non-Discrimination. The United Way of Wayne County, Inc. affirms and fully endorses a policy of non-discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, age, national origin, physical or mental handicap, or sexual orientation for employees, members of the governing board of directors, and clients served by our agency. You would not be violating that policy, because the reason that you would deny service is they're in the country illegally. That's not in here. It doesn't say you can't discriminate against people who are undocumented or illegal alien or anything like that. It says you can't discriminate based on all these other things. But there's nothing in here that says that if you don't provide service to somebody who's not supposed to be here, that you violated their discrimination policy.
I agree.
Does the county use e-verify?
Yes.
Yes.
I rest my case. If the county that uses e-verify, and if we're gonna spend tax
Always a
dollars,
contract.
everybody's gonna use e-verify, as far as I'm concerned.
Mr. Chairman. Ms. Yates, I think you are suffering from your abilities to go out and enhance and expand and explode your program. I say that because your program was great and is great from the standpoint that it was designed to help those that cannot read a vehicle to be able to read. And this is a difference of philosophy. From my standpoint to yours is all I can speak to. You have a philosophy that you are here with a mission to help everybody, no matter where they came from or whatever reason, to provide them these services. I'm here to say that a laudable mission, but you have to limit it. If we are going to provide funding, you have to limit it to citizens of Wayne County. We don't want to provide that service to Lenore County or Mexico or anywhere else. And it's a schematics here in my mind that you would use any way possible to justify that these people are in fact here possibly legally. Now, I say that to say because in your statement here, you're saying will be required a social security number or a tax ID number. And we all know you can go on the internet and get a tax ID number just like that. You hadn't verified anything. You hadn't verified where your residence is or anything. All you've got is a tax ID number. You go to Literacy Connections, you give it to you, and you say, fine, you are a permanent resident. So what I'm saying is it's a method whereby I'm asking that if we're providing funding, that there be a limit of the scope of your mission. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can we go each?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Mayor.
real quick, Mr. Parker, during our lunch or something, can you take a look at this, proposal that has come from Literacy to see, what the scope is? Is there any way that that would even fit what we're looking at? Because the key is that I think if I'm understanding that this board does not want any taxpayer money to go to illegals, okay? That's fine. That's what they're saying here. But are you saying that we need to go through E-Verify to make sure that's the case? Because Literacy, whether they hear illegal or not, are going to provide services to people that are here illegal. Is that right? At some point, somebody's got to.
I will tell you, when I talked to the Literacy Council, they have struggled with this issue as well.
Well, that's good to hear that we're not the
Yeah.
only ones.
They have struggled with this issue as well. They have not denied services to persons who cannot present documents, but they partition them off.
Why can't they
Sure.
present documents?
We're breaking for lunch.
Thank you, Mr.